time to roll up those joints, pack those bowls, and fire up those nails. Because you're listening to Blazin with Bobby Black.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Blazin, a brand new podcast dedicated to all things cannabis. I'm your host, Bobby Black, former senior editor and columnist for High Times Magazine, and former host of Contact High on Sirius XM Radio. Each week here on Blazin, I'll be welcoming on a different special guest who I'll be speaking with on a variety of topics, from movies and music to politics to culture, lifestyle, basically anything and everything of interest to people who enjoy cannabis. Now, I'm a man of many passions, one of the greatest of which is cannabis, of course. But as anyone who knows me will tell you, one of my greatest passions is rock and roll and heavy metal. So I thought it would be appropriate for my very first show to have on a rock and roll musician. Of all the different types of music and types of rock and roll, I'd have to say my absolute favorite is a genre called stoner rock. I covered it in High Times for many years. It was a much maligned and misunderstood label for a type of music that basically just meant hard driving rock with a psychedelic groovy edge to it. I've interviewed and covered many different stoner rock acts over the years, but there's a band I discovered about a decade ago that quickly became one of my all-time favorites. They sort of take that stoner rock, psychedelic groove, heavy rock vibe and mix it with a touch of reggae, which is pretty unusual and pretty amazing when you get to hear it live. The band's name is Lionize, and frontman Nate Bergman is my first guest here on Blazin. What's up, Nate?
Hey, Bobby, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just hanging out in Washington, D.C.
Cool, man. Yeah, you guys are from the D.C., Maryland area, correct?
Yeah, we grew up in Silver Spring, which is kind of like a city suburb that connects to D.C., so we're a D.C. band, I guess, for better or for worse.
Cool. I've been a big fan of you guys for years now. Even when I was back at High Times, I've written about you guys a couple times. I've come to see you so many times, and I just constantly want to keep putting the word out on you guys because I just think you're one of the best up-and-coming rock bands out there. Just such a unique sound. Tell me a little about what your guys' influences were and what drove you to create the kind of music that you create.
Well, I think at the cornerstone of our sound, we grew up listening to Sabbath and Zeppelin and Deep Purple and of course the Beatles and the Who. So I think at the cornerstone of what we love, it's classic rock. And then I think there's a lot of influences kind of post-Sabbath with Dio and Rainbow and even some Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. And then at the same time, I think we also kind of fell in love with Steel Pulse and Bob Marley and reggae and realized that there's this kind of there's this really weird connection when you're a fan of the Bad Brains. They kind of built the bridge between thrash metal and funk and reggae. And I think that's where we kind of fell in love with the idea of that sound.
Yeah, and it's a unique combination. Not many people have tried it and pulled it off and made it work well, and you guys are at the pinnacle of that, I think. I come from the same school as you. I grew up classic rock, heavy metal. I didn't get into listening to any reggae until I was much older, but you guys have all the elements of my favorite type of music, which is not just like a heaviness, but also a groove and also a soulfulness and also a psychedelic element. So you kind of combine all these things that I love into one sound, and like I said, I think it's a pretty unique sound.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I think there's a lot of bands that have predecessors of ours. I think like the Police kind of delved into reggae and punk and pop, and I think even Rush in the 80s kind of delved into some reggae groove stuff. And then there's the Bad Brains, and I really don't think, though, I think there is such a strong connection between dub reggae and, I think there's a lot of people who listen to Bob Marley who also listen to Led Zeppelin. I don't think there's a coincidence there. I think there's a real bridge between that kind of groove. So we just try to explore that as much as possible.
And you guys started off your career. Well, first of all, I've known you. How long have we known each other? It's been a bunch of years at this point.
Man.
I'm not sure.
I would say at least 2006.
Yeah, it was
2007.
First LP, right, for Space Pope?
Yeah, it's been since Space Pope, which was our first full-length record, really.
Right, and that's when I became aware of you guys. I know you guys had a couple of EPs before that, though, right?
Yeah, we put out some EPs, and we've been doing it together as a band since we were about 18, 19. And now, we're all in our 30s. So, half our lives doing this.
Yeah, and when you guys first started getting out there and going on tours, you seemed to gravitate towards opening mostly for more reggae-inspired acts, right? And it's only been, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like more recently you've started gravitating towards playing with and touring with some of the more rock and heavier aspects.
Yeah, well, it's really kind of strange, actually. When we first started out as a band, Steel Pulse was one of the first two big bands to ever take us on tour. In the same year was actually Steel Pulse took us on an amphitheater tour with Steel Pulse and the Wailers, and we were the opening act. And we were way too young and inexperienced to do it. But the guys in Steel Pulse were just kind of enamored by the fact that we wanted to go up and play heavy riffs in front of a reggae crowd, and then kind of do some dub stuff in between. And then that same year, that was 2006, 2007. That same year, Clutch started taking us out on tour, and we would open the show more purposefully with dub and reggae, and then kind of draw people in with the rock. So we used to kind of make a conscious decision to kind of be a little subversive, a little abrasive to the audience, and then that experience kind of melded us, that melded the sound kind of fusing together, I guess.
Cool, and as you know, and as many of my listeners probably know, Clutch has always been one of my favorite bands. One of my main beats at High Times was covering the stoner rock scene back in the 90s, and Clutch kind of were a part of that overarching kind of idea of like heavy yet psychedelic music that stoners liked. So I've been a huge Clutch fan for many years, and you guys definitely feel like in the same vein, and it's probably because you're from the same area, you guys know each other, so you probably influenced in the same way, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think right off the bat, our friendship with Clutch was sparked by us being so into the same types of music. We were into jazz, and we were into classic rock, and we were into reggae, and those guys are all into that. And then I think beyond that, they're one of the greatest bands. I don't even think they get the recognition they deserve. They're single-handedly one of the most creative and prolific, talented rock bands on the planet. And we kind of worship, not kind of, I mean, we worship those guys. We worship Clutch. I mean, they're a perfect example of everything that's great about rock and roll that was great in the 60s and 70s, and they exemplify every one of those aspects today.
Yeah, I would agree, absolutely. And you guys definitely are taking, following in their footsteps, so to speak, and seeing you guys play with Clutch, it clicks and it just feels right. Like, even though you guys have your own unique style with the mixture of dub and whatever else, obviously you have a very different vocal style than Neil does. You have a much more soulful, almost R&B kind of old school R&B kind of vocal, which is one of the things that my wife April and I have always loved about you guys. But you also have a lot of the similar kind of grooviness, and you guys are very compatible, and it's great. If anybody hasn't seen either Lionize or Clutch, I suggest you go check both of them out if possible, or individually also. They're fantastic. I also wanted to ask you, obviously this is the show's called Blazin with Bobby Black. Everybody knows I'm from High Times, so obviously weed is a prevalent theme in my life and in my career, and it comes up when I speak to people, and I know that for a fact that weed plays a bit of a role in your creative process in your lives as well. Tell me a little about how cannabis has influenced your music and your life.
Well, I guess the first thing I'll say is that I never really thought that you had to be high to be creative, or you had to be high to enjoy music or make music. but I can definitely attest to the fact that it definitely improves the quality of the experience for me, at least in the, I think it's really kind of ubiquitous when it comes to teenagers' kind of first experiences with pot. Listening to, records, listening to music and getting high, it kind of, you kind of rediscover art for the first time, I think, when you're young and you experience that. And I think now as an adult, I would say I use weed as a creative tool to give me a different paradigm and a different perspective shift, if you will, from what I might normally think or see or feel. So when it comes to writing, I think there's really no better way to approach an idea than getting high and letting the channels open up, if you will.
Cool. And you obviously I experienced similar things, as did most people who were at least rock and roll people who were growing up, and you get high on, you smoke a joint, you put on a certain album, whether it be a Led Zeppelin album or a Sabbath or whatever, a Doors album, and it just takes you to a different place, takes you to a different level. Do you have any particular memories or experiences of a certain album that you listened to for the first time, or maybe the first time you got high, or some experience from your youth when you realized that intersection between cannabis and music and consciousness?
For sure. There's two very specific things that played a role, and it's, thinking back on it now, it's probably a bit serendipitous, but one of the first times I got high and listened to my dad's record collection, he had an album in there. There was Bob Marley's last record, which is Uprising. And the first song on Uprising is called Coming In From the Cold. And I do specifically remember me and my buddy, Adam, after school one day, and we might have been skipping, to be perfectly honest with you. In fact, I'm positive we were. We smoked a joint, and we went home, and we put on this record, and I'll never forget kind of hearing it for the first time, and the record kind of comes in with this weird clav piano, and then the drums kind of hit like plap, plap, plap. And I just remember being like, this is definitely, I've never heard it like this before, and it kind of moved me internally. It kind of touches you in that place in your soul that you don't really know. And I remember feeling really overwhelmingly good and positive and kind of completely in the moment, as if time was standing still. And I still do believe that one of the great equalizers with smoking marijuana is that it allows you to slow down time, kind of be in that moment. And then the second was, the first time I ever really sat down, I listened and smoked in my room and listened to records on headphones back to back, was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, which, albeit as cliche as that sounds, that's one of the greatest experiences of a young person's life. And I remember feeling really positive and also very hopeless, kind of from that weird feeling that Pink Floyd gives you. And then immediately after that, I listened to Black Sabbath, which was fucking terrifying. There's no way around that. That was also, I remember feeling like music could also be really kind of scary and dangerous. And I think that if you put all those three records together, you kind of sum up exactly the kind of music I love to make. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a fun night to me. Getting high and listening to Floyd and Sabbath. I mean, those are two of my top three. Basically, like Zeppelin, Floyd, and Sabbath are probably my top three favorite bands, I would have to say.
Yeah, and when you break those bands down musically, you have blues and jazz and funk and what would become metal. And, I think that's the beauty of those bands, and that's kind of what I hope that we achieve sometimes as a band too, that eclectic feel.
Sure. So you guys have put out 4 full lengths now, right? Space Pope and Glass Machine came out in 2008. Destruction Manual in 2011. Super Czar and the Vulture also in 2011. 2 albums in one year.
Yeah, 2 albums in 1 year. We were at a band house kind of writing at such a prolific pace that we experimented with putting out 2 records in 1 year, and we got the most recognition and the most press that year. And then we spent a few more years kind of playing the game of waiting a couple years in between records, and now we're right back into that initial cycle of trying to put out as much music as possible.
Well, the last one that you put out was in 2014, Jetpack Soundtrack, and I remember coming to the listening party in LA. You guys did, remember? Me and Danny Danko from High Times, and we went and we hung out at the studio. I forgot the name of the studio, but was it like Elite or something like that? What was it called, the studio where you guys did it? Do you remember?
I don't. It was some rehearsal studio.
Yeah.
Some famous rehearsal studio.
It was a cool place.
Near Hollywood, yeah. Well, what was funny was the party was kind of boring. I remember being like, oh, fuck, it's very nice that all these people showed up, but it's kind of just like everyone just kind of sipping on wine and being kind of, reclusive, I guess, or introverted. And then as soon as you and Danny got there, we were smoking.
We were sipping on something else, yeah.
Yeah, we smoked the whole place out, and then all of a sudden it felt like a party, and the music was kind of up, and people were grooving, and that was awesome.
Yeah, and then after that, we all went for hot dogs at Pink's, right?
Yes.
And ate way too much and got like a bit sick to our stomachs, if I recall.
But I mean, that's like
that's rock and roll, man.
I agree, and you know what? I wouldn't trade that in for any paycheck, for any job ever. You could not get me to trade those kind of memories in, because you forget about them, and then all of a sudden we're talking now, and I remember, and that's a really beautiful thing.
Right on, man. So you guys have headlined the Warped Tour, I think, 2 years in a row, right?
Yes.
Who are some of the other artists we mentioned Clutch, we mentioned, I think, Steel Pulse. Who are some of the other acts that you've toured with?
We've toured with Israel Vibration, Streetlight Manifesto, The Bad Brains, Ozo Motley, Charlie Tuna, Pepper, The Dirty Heads, Pacifier, The Sword, Kylesa and Red Fang and The Saviors was another great tour.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys are taking a little break from touring now because you're doing recording. You're back in the studio. Tell me a little about what you guys have been working on lately since Jetpack. Actually,
on the 8th of January, the first of 3 EPs that we're putting out, we put out one's called Alpha. This first one's called Alpha, and it's completely on our own. We engineered, mixed, mastered it. Every piece of music you hear on this album, we did ourselves.
Cool. And so are you guys releasing it through a record company, or you're just doing it solo?
We're releasing it on our own imprint.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we did Jetpack with Weathermaker, with Clutch's label, and we learned a whole lot about recording and how to put out your own music. And while I think we will always do stuff with those guys, we wanted to kind of step out on our own and give our fans what it seems like they've been asking for a long time, which is more music. So in 2016, we're going to put out 3 EPs and 1 full-length double record.
Wow!
And that's all going to come out this year. Yeah.
Wow, double record! You're going physical graffiti on us.
Yes, and I actually I have a song for you from that first EP, Alpha, and the song is called Dream Wizards.
Cool. And since you guys own it yourself and there's no record company, I can play some of it on the podcast and not worried about getting sued.
You can play the whole song, and you can download it, and there's no legality. There's no problems there.
All right, let's take a little break and listen to the new track from Lionize, Dream Wizards, from the Alpha EP. Let's check it out.
Park Lawn Drive with a handful of paper
All right, and we're back, and wow, that was pretty amazing. That was the new Lionize track called Dream Wizards. How do you guys come up with the concepts for your songs? Who does most of the lyric writing?
Henry, the bass player, Henry Upton, writes the majority of the lyrics, and I write maybe the minority of the lyrics, and it's kind of an open process where Hank is writing to suit how I sing and what I sing. And we kind of put our heads together about the topics. And, sometimes Hank might come up with a verse and a pre-chorus, and then I'll say, hey, let's sing this for the chorus. Everyone's very hands-on. There's no real egos involved in it. It's everyone brings ideas to the table, and we kind of run with them.
Cool, and that's one of the things I should mention. If anyone out there listening gets a chance to meet these guys, you'll see that's one of the things I've always liked about you. You're so chill, regular guys, down to earth, and no egos. I've met a lot of musicians and bands, as I'm sure you have as well, over the years, and some people get a little, they're a little prima donna or a little, get a little full of themselves. But you guys are always so chill, and I can't even tell you, listeners out there, how many times I've blazed up with these guys backstage at their shows and out back behind the place and all that stuff. They're always down for a good session.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been fortunate to tour with a lot of really cool bands. But I think too, in the age of the internet, you have bands that get very big very quickly because of the internet, and they haven't really been humbled by like sleeping in a van for 3 months on tour, and they don't know what it really means to be a working class musician and not just a poster boy for a band.
Yeah.
Anyone can put on skinny jeans and claim that they play metal. And I think there's a lot of that out there where everything is bullshit. It's kind of like they worked really hard at looking like a band before they ever figured out their instruments and how to play like one. And I think our band in particular, we spent a long time paying the dues, and we're still not rich and famous. So there's really no ego here. It's just we love to play music, and we're a working class band.
And that shows, and it always shows with the people that have that same credo that you do. Paying your dues is great, and I know that you guys would probably keep playing music even if you never became rich and super famous, but I hope that you do find the success and rewards that you deserve, because too many super talented bands and musicians don't get the level of recognition that they deserve, while there's a lot of people who, like you say, aren't necessarily as talented or aren't as committed to the lifestyle and to the music, and they become famous and big because they got a hit song or because they got 1 million views or something of that kind,
Sure. I mean, I don't, at the end of the day, too, I don't think we were ever seeking fortune or fame. I think what we're seeking to do is create great art. And if we can get recognized and pay our mortgages doing that, then that's really the reward at the end of the day. I don't think we're a band that will ever be a band that's on the Billboard Top 10, but I do think that more and more people every year we do this come to understand that we're here to do it for real, and we're not just a fad, or we're not following a trend, because it's actually incredibly unpopular what we do. We never ever worry about what is cool or uncool. We're simply just trying to be the best band on the planet, or second best next to Clutch.
Right on, man. Right on. Well, tell all the listeners where they can hear and see more of you guys online, and where they might be able to see you perform.
We are Lionize, and we're 100% plugged in through the back of our cerebral cortex into the internet directly at lionizemusic.com. Instagram, Lionize Music. Facebook, Lionize Music. Twitter, Lionize Music. Yeah, we just want to rock and roll, and we hope you guys do too.
Great, and I can't wait to hear more of the new music that you guys are working on. And one of these days, we've talked about it, but one of these days I've got to get down there and get in the studio with you guys while you're recording. I think that would be a blast.
I think you should come down when we go to do the next EP and just hang out for a weekend.
It sounds good to me. So just let me know when that is. And do you guys have any plans to do any live performing in the near future, or are you going to just be hounding it in the studio?
Tour dates in February in the U.S. We're going to do some select dates: Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, Grand Rapids, Michigan. That whole region. Maybe about 7 or 8 dates, and then March we're back in the studio. In April, May we are going over to England to perform at Desert Fest, which is the UK's premier stoner rock festival. And then we're going to tour around UK and Europe, and over into Greece in the new year. So
wow, awesome! Greece is a cool place.
Yeah, we've never been, but we're ready to rock in the Parthenon for sure.
Right on, man. Rocking in the ancient world. Cool.
Yeah, you have to. That's the heaviest because it's all, everything's stone.
Right on, man. Cool. Well, Nate, thanks so much for taking time to talk to us today. And please give my best to all the guys in the band. Tell them I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing more from them again in the near future.
Cheers, Bobby. Good luck with everything.
All right. Thanks, man. Take it easy.
Talk in. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, that's going to be it for the first edition of Blazin. Thanks to all of you for tuning in and toking up with me. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Bobby Black, on Facebook and Instagram at BobbyBlack420. For info, updates, and photos about the show, go to facebook.com/blazinwithbb. Be sure to like us and leave some feedback. And please join me again next week when my guest will be America's most notorious pot smuggler, Robert Platshorn. Until next time, this is Bobby Black saying, blaze on, brothers and sisters.